may I now request Tezuka-san to come up on stage? Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Makoto Tezuka, film director from Japan and a director of Tezuka Productions. Tezuka Production is established by Osamu Tezuka. He's my father. And そしたら、すいません。ここから日本語で話します。はい。今日はまず最初になぜ日本の漫画やアニメが大変ビッグなビジネスになったかということを話しますが、おそらく日本人の大半の人はその答えを知っています。それは手塚治虫がいたからです。はい。まあ今日は基本はアニメの話になるんですが、その前にどうしても漫画の話をしなければいけません。なぜならば日本のアニメは漫画と大変密接な関係があるからです。そしてその漫画を、非常に開拓した人間として手塚治虫のことを話さなければならないんです。はい。手塚治虫は、日本の、大阪というところで生まれて、それで自力で漫画を描き始めました。そしてその後、日本で一番有名な漫画家になるわけですが、今日はあまり詳しい話をする時間がありませんので、興味ある人は皆さん自分で調べてください。彼がやったことで一番素晴らしいことは、まず日本の漫画というその形を作ったことです。もちろん手塚治虫よりも前に漫画はありましたけども、それよりも今一番売れている漫画の形を作ったのが手塚治虫です。そしてその漫画の中には非常に文学性、そして大きなテーマといったものを入れました。それによって、日本の子供漫画は非常にレベルの高いものになったのです。そしてもちろんその後に、テレビのアニメのシリーズを日本で最初に始めました。このようなことが一番大きなこととしてはありますね。もちろん作家として非常に素晴らしい人間で、700作品を超える作品を書いています。これは原稿の枚数によると15万枚以上の原稿を書いています。本当に日本では漫画の神様とか漫画の父親というふうに言われています。もちろんその前に日本には漫画がありましたし、もっと歴史を遡ると日本には漫画的な表現というものがもともとありました。それはどういうことかというと、このように白と黒だけの、そして輪郭の線だけのユニークな表現です。もう中世の時代にそういうものが書かれていましたし、江戸時代には非常にそれが流行りました。ですから、日本の漫画というのは色がついていませんね。はい。もしかしたらインドもそうですし、アメリカやヨーロッパの漫画には色がついていますが、日本の漫画は色がない状態で非常に発展したんです。そういう中でですね、非常に、記念的な作品が、新宝島という作品です。新宝島、はい、新宝島は、Yes, New Treasure Island. Yes. これが、第二次大戦が終わった後に手塚治虫が最初に書いた長い漫画です。非常に長いそのエンターテインメントのストーリーがありました。そしてその表現が大変映画的でした。そしてその文学的な小説のような表現、内容を持っていました。これがもう子供たちの間で大ヒットしたのです。
Children, it became a very hit, popular.
これが日本の今の漫画のスタートだというふうに言う人がいます。
That is what on the screen you can see that the manga start there.
これは手塚治虫が、漫画を描く前の日本の漫画のスタイルです。
And then what you see on the screen is before Tezuka-san actually started writing manga.
非常におとなしい形で表現されています。
Before that actually it was more of a digital and then adult type of manga.
舞台を見るような感じです。
And then basically the media and then some people talking.
手塚治虫の漫画はこういうような感じです。
You can see that this is is a very different from Tezuka-san.
非常に立体的で何か非常に映画的な表現。
And then basically a lot of pictures and other things are mentioned there.
これによって非常に日本のたくさんの子供たちが魅了されて、漫画というものをみんなが読むようになります。
And then Japanese children actually started liking it too much. Okay.
そして手塚治虫はもうたくさんの漫画を描きました。今代表作を簡単に紹介しますけども。
And then I will just talk about Tezuka-san's one representative work.
これはライオンキングではありません。
This is not a Lion King.
これはライオンキングを作った人たちが多分この作品にインスパイアされたんだと私は思います
And
が。
what I feel is that people who made Lion King actually may have got inspired by this.
これはもう非常に長いお話を毎回毎回その連載の中で見せるという、連続する、お話を漫画にした最初の漫画です。
And then basically the different part and then consecutively repeating all that manga. This was the first of its kind.
これによってもう非常に小説や映画のような長い物語が漫画でも表現できるというこ
So
とが証明
basically
さ
a
れました。
long novel and then that can be actually put in a manga form that got actually established.
その中にはですね、人間と自然の共生といった、非常に現代的なテーマも含まれてい
And
た
then
わけで
basically
す。
the modern theme like man and nature togetherness. That is what the theme was.
ですから、ただ楽しむだけではなくて、非常にその教養の部分も発展するような、
And
そ
then
んな漫
basically
画で
not
す。
only for the enjoyment or the entertainment, but also some kind of a theme, the responsible theme was actually built around it.
この漫画は後々に日本で最初のカラーのアニメーションになります。
And then after that, this became actually the color animation of in Japan.
そして皆さんも知っていると思います。アストロボーイという漫画があります。
Astro Boy also, I think most of you know about it.
はい。これは未来やそれから、科学というものを描いた、日本でも最初の子供漫画です。
And then this is basically the child manga because the future, and then it's themed around the future. And then this is basically about the robot, how the robots actually have started playing a role.
この漫画はもう大変ヒットします。日本でほとんどの子供たちが読んでいます。
Then basically this manga also became a major hit, and then almost all Japanese children used to read it.
そして漫画の主人公を使って実装する、要するにマーチャンダイジングのビジネスというものがここで生まれます。
And then basically the business also got developed because of this manga, and then a lot of other new business ideas came up.
それは手塚さんが考えたことではありませんが、自然にそういうことが生まれます。
And then basically Tezuka-san was not thinking about it, but actually it got evolved as a natural expansion.
なので、そこでそういう技術を作る会社と漫画が協力するということが生まれるわけです。
And then basically the manga and the company who are into this business, they got together and then they started thinking of business models.
それはまた別の漫画です。それはプリンセスナイト、リボンの。
And then Princess Knight, that's the manga.
それは日本で最初に京都の若い女性のために。
And then this was basically for young girls.
この主人公自身が女性ですが非常に活躍をする、冒険をするというタイプの。
And then this is basically the first of its kind where actually a lot of actual action oriented by the two persons.
現在でも日本ではそういう少女が活躍するアニメーションがたくさん日本にある。それも一番最初だと。
And then basically this was the first of its kind where right now also a lot of other young girls also have got this kind of a manga theme thing, but I think this was one of the first of its kind.
それはブラックジャックという日本では大人気があります。
Next is Blackjack. This is also very popular in Japan.
それは石原主人公の最初に。
And then this is basically then the doctor and the manga.
大変エンターテインメントの役で。
And then basically also it got huge applause from the entertainment industry.
そしてブラックジャックに240億というお話が入っています。
And then basically more than 200 stories around it.
これは多分皆さんは分かると思いますが。
I think you very well understand and recognize that this is Buddha. And then this is first of its kind around Buddha. And then basically about the priest also, and then this is of the first kind which Tezuka-san started writing. And then basically Italian TV actually came, and then basically we want to make it as a movie. That kind of a request we received. And then because of that, Tezuka-san is very neutral to different religions, and then that also got established and very well came out, very evident. So I think about the manga, there are many other manga stories also, but I think I will stop it here about the manga part.
日本で、日本では鉄道さん以前から長編漫画を作っている会社がありました。
Then basically the birth of and then the manga was actually done by the company.
それはほとんど映画館のために作っている。
But because those mangas were actually limited to the movie making.
そこで鉄道さんの会社では、テレビのためにアニメーションが作れないかということを考えた。
And then basically then it started that about for the TV, how about making the manga for the TV shows?
ほとんどのテレビ局でそれは無理だろうと考えています。
The TV channel, they said that no, it must be very impossible to do it.
だからアニメーションするのは非常に時間もお金もかかるので、テレビに向いてないと思います。
Because animation and then this is also team, it requires a lot of time and money. So it is not suited for the TV shows.
それを鉄道さんはちょっと無理でもやってみようということで、それを始めた。
So Tezuka-san then started, he did not give up and then he started thinking it seriously. Then even if it takes time and money, then let's start at least sometime.
結果的にはそれが日本で最初のテレビシリーズのアニメーションであります。
And then as a result, it became the first of its kind is the TV series of animation in Japan.
で、これは皆さんに記憶してほしいんですが、そのアニメの会社は自分の会社で作ったんです。
And then this TV company was actually by Tezuka-san started by on his own. Please recall that.
漫画を描いていたその本人がテレビのアニメーションを作ったんです。
And then because actually the same person, the same author actually started and then set up his own studio.
で、もともと別の後にファストボーイが大変さっきも説明した通り、日本で人気がありましたから、その人気のあるキャラクターがテレビに登場して活躍するというのを日本中の子供は見て楽しんだんです。
And then because the Astro Boy, which I just showed about the manga, then he started looking at it as a TV show, and then that became extremely popular within the Japanese boys.
最初の日本のテレビアニメですが、大成功しました。とても大きな IP になりました。
And then basically this became actually led to a big IP around that.
そこで生まれたシステムというのが、この次のような感じですけども、つまり漫画の作者がいます。
And then basically this is the system of how the anime IP of Japan actually works.
当然ながら漫画を出版する出版社という
The TV publishing house, that is, I think it.
一緒にいるわけです。そして、テレビ局、今であればいろんなメディアというものがあります。
Then this is basically the TV media was required.
で、また一方では、そのキャラクターのブースを作っているという、マーチャンダイジングのメーカーがあります。
And then even the other stuff was also the manufacturing merchandise also, that was also started from this.
この3つの世界が最初から協力し合って作ったのが、言ってみれば、鉄の後の最初の世界なんですね。
And then this is actually the starting point of how the three got together and then started creating the system of animation in Japan.
ですから、アトムがヒットしたことで、その後にたくさんの会社がアニメーションを作り始めます。そしてたくさんのテレビもアニメーションを放送始めます。
Afterward, a lot of companies actually started doing the same thing, and then a lot of TV channels also, TV producers also, they also got together and then creating this kind of a thing.
それはすべてこの形、このシステムの形をつないでいく。
This is the thing which is the same system which is being played out here.
漫画の原作者、出版社、そして、
Let me reiterate that manga creator, the publisher, then the TV station media, and then the manufacturer of the merchandise.
この3つの形が作り上げたのが日本のアニメの産業の基本です。
And then these three actually form the fundamentals of animation industry in Japan.
今でもこの形というのが守られています。
And then even this type also is being followed in Japan, even now also.
もう一つ日本のアニメの特徴があります。
One more special characteristic is there from Japanese animation.
それは、やはり漫画からアニメーションが始まっているということで、この漫画の表現がアニメーションに取り入れられているということです。
And then basically from manga side, the animation started, but in animation also there is some kind of a manga type of structures.
当然まず漫画がとても
And then basically because the manga has the good stories around it.
そして、漫画的な表現ですね、漫画の中の面白い表現というのがたくさんあるわけです。
And then many symbols of manga are used here.
それがアニメーションの中に効果的に使われるという。
And then even in animation also, they are being used very effectively.
で特に重要なのは、キャラクターの表情ですね。
And then basically the expression of these characters, this is important.
漫画というのは動かない表現ですけど、この動かない中に非常にその表情、感情を表現するということが、うまくできています。
And then the facial rich expression also, this is basically the expression of emotions.
特に手塚さんは非常にその絵がうまかったので、たった一枚の動かない絵でも表情を豊かに伝えることができました。
So basically because of this, he was able to express the very rich facial expression of the emotions.
ですから日本のアニメーションというのは今でも、その非常に表情豊かな感情表現というのが絵そのものにあるというふうに考えています。
And then in that picture itself, I think it captures a lot of emotions, and then which is very critical thing, characteristic of Japanese animation.
キャラクターそのものが大変魅力的だということです。
And then basically the characters themselves are very impressive.
大雑把な言い方をしますと、欧米のアニメーションは感情を伝えるためにたくさんの動きの中から感情を伝えています。
And then, for example, in American thing, a lot of other actions are involved, but
しかし、日本のアニメーションは、あまり動かなくても表情や
but the contrasting point of Japanese is that even though there are no multiple actions or movement, but still I think they are able to convey a lot of other content.
それが一番違うところではないかと。
And then that is where I think the most important difference lies between the US and the Japanese animation.
もちろん現在ではもっといろいろな技術が進歩しましたので、お互いにそういうところは影響し合って作っていると思います。
I think with the advent of new technology, I think both of the technologies, both of the formats, they have been taking a lot of input from each other.
ただ、先ほどの業界の知識、そして漫画が基本になっているということが日本のアニメの一番重要な
But I think what I want you to
性質だということは今も
understand is that the manga remains at the heart of it.
私のプレゼンテーション以上、その後は他の皆さんで一緒に
My presentation is over, and then I think I will pass on to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tezuka-san, for that amazing history of
皆さんどうもありがとうございます。
anime. And
歴史を
I
振り
think
返って
the
ですね
one that
本当
caught my eye is that one of the earliest anime and manga was way back in 1947, which is when India became free. So for a lot of the young people in this audience, you can imagine how ancient an art form it is, if I can call it actually ancient, and yet it's still so relevant in today's time. I'm now going to invite Nakayama-san on stage for his presentation.
Sorry, before going into the actual session, give me an additional 10 minutes. Just give you some quick introduction of the Japanese entertainment and animation history. And it's a bit starting from the off topic, but I'm quite impressed by that. Mr. Tezuka's presentation. His speech was recalls me a lot of the memories. The Buddha, written by Tezuka, was 1970 something. That was my debut of the India's related things. When I was a junior high school, 1990s, 1993, it was my first impression of, India is really this. I have been working in the anime industry and the gaming industry. Originally, I have a game developer of the Pac-Man and Katamari Damacy. And I changed my job to the more anime producer when I joined in that push role. But backed by those 10 years experience, last 3 years, I dedicated more for the academy or more for the governmental administration. So always it's a bit hard to define what I'm doing, but kind of a middleman of the industry. 10 years history of the anime games and sport entertainment. And additional academic, I'm a lecturer on a Keio and Waseda University. And also the METI, which is at the Ministry of the Economy and Technology in Japan. So it's like a Fiji version in Japan. So kind of in the midst of those third-person standpoint, today I'm gonna give you some quick market insight. And this discussion, this presentation is following to the path paved by the Tezuka Osamu's one. You have already done the 20th century history. But looking back over how Japanese character was evolved, and it's so many characters put in. And the size of this sphere comes from the total economic size since its generation. It's not only the animation, comic, anime, and game, merchandising. Most of those business was originated from the Tezuka Makoto's the strive. But by seeing back to the history of the character, there's so many famous ones even in India, right? That Invaders and Pac-Man and Seven Stars and Anpanman, Dragon Ball. Sorry, I have took too much egg on that basket. Like this. So my finding through the historical the analysis of how much character was generated and how much economy was generated through those multiple business is like this. 1970s, 1990s, those 13 years is the kind of golden age for Japan. As like a growing American economy, Japan is also following the path of the America, and we succeeded to make a anime industry and comic industry and a gaming industry as well. And that'll be penetrable not only to Japan, but also the USA and Europe and even India. And the 1970s, 90s, we are still sticking to the legacy and those economy, entertainment economy itself, so that their positioning is growing even in Japan. So you guys have experiencing of this, the waves. Waves is kind of the waves coming from entertainment to the economy. Even in Japan, sluggish economical, we are struggling to revive back our Japanese golden age. But only entertainment is kind of the second biggest wave coming after the automobile. Next slide tell you about that one. So this one. So it's a bit more economical one. But this is the comparative chart of that how much of each product was exporting from Japan to outside. And the biggest one is the automobile, definitely 150 or 200 billion. Is the size of the exporting from Japan to outside, mostly America, and next to America, China, and India. And the dot line tells you that the internal Japanese entertainment industry itself. So likely 120 billion. But you can see this red line, starting from the 10 billion is 10 years ago. But it's keep growing to the 60 billion. So almost half of the Japanese economy happening in entertainment is exporting from Japan to outside. And still that, the USA and China is at the top two priority. But we start to see another country could be a more penetrable market. And we start to watch that the third places next to the America and China. And this is some slide of the anime market. And the bar chart tells you the internal Japanese anime market. And this line chart tells you the exporting of animation. So as here, you have already seen that the amount of the exporting of entertainment is triple in 10 years ago. And console game and animation, those two are two biggest progressors of our entertainment content into the international. And the animation exporting, starting from the 2.8 billion, is 2013, and 10 years, it got to be the 1.18 billion. The size of the exporting overtaking the size of the happening inside of Japan. And the contributor of those kind of the biggest Attack on Titan is coming from today's guest. Those guys that are making those animation. So you can slightly understand that how, even in Japanese, that the last 10 years is globalization is quite eye-opening, quite different. And the last one, this is the last chart I'm going to tell you. But just 1 week ago, this chart was unveiled by Betty. And this is a chart of the vertical line is the yearly growth of each market. And the horizontal line is the content market size. So definitely USA, China is the biggest one. But I also amazed of the cluster one. Historically, we have looking at the globalization nearly equal Americanization or Chinalization. But USA, China, UK, definitely biggest content market, but the gigantic and a bit matured. What's next? Cluster 2. So we have a less chance to get into the market of India. And I have a less experience to learn about India. But even a government, they are watching out that next to the automobile. Next one is the entertainment. And what's the market? Then USA, China, UK, then India. We have to take a more closer look at this market. And this is my very first experience to visit this India. And even in this morning, I have learned a lot. And so Modi was saying that 53 billion was the kind of the market of the animation. To my understanding, that the animation is split by Pixar and those American 3D animation. And Japanese animation is a bit different because we originate from the manga, which is more focused on the character expression, facial expression. There will be different animation market, anime market. Both is composing of those 50 or 60 billion market. And that the penetration is coming from more lighter side to the more left side. India is definitely the fastest growing market. Still the blue ocean for us. So that could be a good guideline for the next conversation with the group. So that's all that my presentation. Sorry, that a bit shortcut, but hopefully you can get some insight from this presentation. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you so much, Nakayama-san.
中山さん、どうもありがとうございます。
Can I now request all the other panelists to join us on stage? Anu,
じゃあ、
Katsumata-san,
他のパネリストの皆さ
Kimura-san.
んが、ステージに
So
お上がりくださいというように
the idea of the first two presentations, the way we chose to put it together, is one is the history of anime and how it started, and then subsequently
Yeah,
also the business side of it, as you saw that how
Sorry,
prolific
business
the economic
no,
side of it has been.
先ほどの話が
I think that the slide that Nakayama-san presented, which is comparing it with the automobile industry, we all know how
非
prolific
常に面白い
the
のは
Japanese
中山さん
automobile
が
industry, Toyota is
自動
synonymous
車
with the
業
world
界
over.
とアニメ業界
And
に
to sort of compare it with the entertainment industry and particularly the anime industry is truly remarkable. And I think it just gives you a sense of how big that industry is and how focused the government of China is in ensuring that it reaches to every corner of the world. And I think the last sort of, as you can see, more than 50 years, anime is truly really penetrated. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with Katsumata-san. Anime Times was a company, and at the time when you started was a very, very bold venture to start in 2015. So my question is, how did you come up with the idea of bringing almost more than 14 companies under one umbrella, managing all these different companies, and then convincing of them to come together and work together? I know it's extremely difficult in the context of Japan. So I'm very curious to know, how did you manage to pull
非
this
常に
off?
興味があるんだったら教えてくれませんか
Okay, before I answer in Japanese, I'd like to make a brief self-introduction.
まず
I'm the
簡単な自己紹介をさせてください。
president of Anime Times. Anime Times is an anime channel of digital distribution. We have launched Anime Times in India 1.5 years ago. Have you ever heard of Anime Times? Yes, good. It's on the Amazon Prime, an optional channel. And I'm also a president of Avex Pictures, which is a producing company. My career is that I used to produce Full Metal Alchemist in another company, and in Avex Pictures, my famous title is Yuri on Ice. It's a figure skater, and also maybe Black Clover. It's a jump title. So from now on, I'd like to go in detail, speak in Japanese.
これから日本語で喋らせてください。
まずアニメタイムズのその創世記なんですけども、2015年に設立されました。
So Anime Times actually took birth in 2015.
日本ではその年は配信元年と言われた年でした。
And then basically I think that was the time when it was the distribution year. That was the thing.
パッケージから配信に移行した年なんですけど、その主な出来事として、2015年にNetflix とAmazon プライムが日本のサービスを開始いたしました。
And then in 2015, I think the Netflix and Amazon Prime also started their service.
日本の歴史で例えると、黒船来航って言って、ちょっと通訳するの難しいかもしれないですけど、江戸時代にあったお話なんですけれども、
And I think in Japanese time it may be hard to interpret, but I think in Edo period there was a kurojime, something like that.
ネットフリックスとやっぱりアマゾンプライムが、アメリカのプラットフォーマーが日本に入ることは、配信が成長するという意味ではものすごい期待があったんですけれども、やっぱり一方で、コンテンツホルダーにとっては少しやっぱり危機というか不安もありました。
And then basically Netflix and Amazon Prime, they actually boosted the distribution, but the content part of it still remains the challenge. Some of it.
アニメタイムズの株主の13社は、日本の出版社と、さっきから漫画とアニメは非常に密接な関係っていう話ありましたけれども、漫画出版社とアニメスタジオが株主になっています。
And then basically in anime time, there are 13 companies who are the stakeholders, and then they are from the publishing house. And then last time also we talked about comic and then the animation. There is a close relationship between that. I think this is very important to keep in mind.
三大出版社の中には集英社とある社長が入ってて、アニメスタジオも、多くのアニメスタジオが入っているんですけれども、コンテンツホルダーの、集合体が一つのプラットフォームというちょっと考え方でスタートいたします。
And then basically then the single platform where the animation studio also can be there, and then the publishing house can become basically a single platform. That is why what started us to start the business.
プラットフォームインプラットフォームという考え方で、大型のやはり外資のプラットフォーマーと対峙するときに、コンテンツホルダー、つまり、権利を持っているところが集まる、作り手たちの集まりを一つのプラットフォームという考え方をする。
And then something similar to the platform inside the platform. That is what I think we are talking about. Then the smallest scriptwriters, and then they became a one platform, and then the bigger platform also.
当時やはりその配信に対する成長の機会もあったんですけども、やはりその、外資プラットフォームと向き合うやっぱり脅威とか緊張感もあったんで、この形態でスタートできたんだと思っています。
And then basically the distribution actually took a very major leap towards it, but I think this is also very important that there was some kind of a nervousness about the content part of it.
アニメ専門チャンネルですので、ちょっと海外でもスタートしようということで、1年半前にインドで開始いたしました。
And then in animation channel, we wanted to start in India also. So 1.5 years ago, we started in India.
コンテンツホルダーの13社のタイトルから、他のタイトルまで幅広く扱っています。
And then instead of 13 companies, we have started looking at a bigger scale.
ヒンズー語、タミル語、テルグ語、カナダ語っていう4カ国で、例えば、進撃の巨人はそれで4カ国吹き替えで今年からスタート。
And then from this year onward, there are 4 major Indian languages which are covered in our endeavor.
で、ローカライズ、これインドに限らず、ローカライズをするときに、やっぱり気をつけてることがあって、それは3つあります。
And then there are 3 major points. When we start doing the localization, we have to keep in mind 3 special points.
ローカライズの一つは、よく文字通り言う、その言語対応。
And then one part is the expression, or what kind of expression we are using.
インドのように非常に言語が多くて方言が多いことは、この言語対応が非常に重要。
Then there are various languages in India and then various dialects in India. So I think we have to take care of it.
字幕の吹き替えと、子供たちが分かるように、完全に声の吹き替えみたいなものも含めて、先によって対応しております。
So I think we have started taking into account because the Indian children, different background, different things, so they have to be very easily understandable by the Indian kids.
ローカライズのちょっと講義の意味での言語対応以外で大事なのが、やはりその、実際のその、コラボですね、店舗とのコラボで、実際ファンのコミュニティと接することが非常に重要だなと思います。
And then another point, more than the language part, is that the society connection and then the interaction with the society, that part also is to be taken into account.
うちにインドの地元のスタッフ非常に優秀な方々がいて、週末に1店舗でイベントをやったり、作品の、T シャツであったり、マーチャンダイジングのものであったり、またこれはアニメタイムストアで売ったりみたいなことで、なんていうんですかね、フ ファンコミュニティ、ファンに喜んでもらえるような接点っていうのをリアルで持つこと、つまりデジタルでやってることとリアルでやることっていうこと、この2つが非常に重要だっていうのが2つ。
Very important point to understand is that the fan community, not only the digital fan community, but in the actual real terms also. So, for example, one particular shop was selected, and then basically doing various actions like T-shirts and then selling the merchandise and so on and so forth. So, it is very important to do the actual real connect also with the actual fan.
3つ目のローカライズが多分一番大変で、新しいけどもやらなきゃいけないのがやはり、インドのそのローカルの、地域に合う企画開発を共同でやっていくっていうことかな。
And the third was the hardest because I think this required us to collaborate with the Indian local people and then come up with some productions.
よくアニメ化の話で、その二大叙情詩のインドのマハーバーバターやったり、以前アニメ化されたラーマーヤナもよくアニメ化してほしいという依頼があって、それも検討しておりますけれども、もう非常に我々それをやるにはとても勉強しないと、これは非常に壮大で。
For example, we have been actually getting the request to do Mahabharata and Ramayana also to put in the animation, and then I think this is very, very difficult for us to understand. First of all, we have to do a lot of detailed reading before we can take up this project.
あとはスポーツのアニメでクリケットのアニメをやってくださいと。それ以前、巨人の星のクリケット版がインドであったという話を聞いたことあるんですけれども、我々の方でもそのクリケットの e スポーツが主人公の、クリケットをもともとやってたんだけれども、ちょっと障害を受けて、その後 e スポーツの主人公としてクリケットをやってるみたいな、そういう企画もちょっと今考えていた。
And then, for example, another request is that why don't you put the cricket also in the animation form? And then we have been receiving this, then fan base also. But for example, while playing cricket, we got some sports injury and so on and so forth. So that kind of a considerations also.
いずれにしてもその草の根的にどういうものがそのローカルに合うかみたいなところを考えて、そのアニメの日本のアニメの組み合わせ、インドとのその文化だったり、正解をとの組み合わせっても本当に何万通りってあるんですけど、そのベストの組み合わせを考えていくっていうことがすごく重要だなという。
So what I want to convey to you is that Japanese animation and then together putting it together with the Indian culture, that is I think what the main theme is, and then that is what we are actually really exploring it.
インドと日本の文化で非常に合うものって結構あって、実は RRR って日本では宝塚歌劇団って言ってミュージカルの女性集団がやってるミュージカルなんですけど、 RRR って宝塚歌劇がやったんですけども、この RRR のその旋律っていうのが非常に日本語の言語になってて、むしろその欧米のものをミュージカル化した時よりもしっくりきて違和感がなかったので、なんかそういう音楽的な視点での組み合わせもやっぱり何かコンテンツを作っていく上では重要かもしれない。
And then what I understand is that, for example, a picture RRR, where the music was, the lyrics also were quite similar to the Japanese lyrics also. So it was very easy for us to relate and then understand that. So instead of more than the US part of it, it is important that RRR type of musical connections can be thought of.
Right. So thank you so much, Atma-san. I really appreciate the depth of the study of the Indian market. You've gone not only languages, dialects, and as well as culture, and you're well up to date about what movies work in India. So I think we can see how and why Japanese anime is so successful, because before you enter any market, you go to the bottom of it. So I'm going to come to Anu now. Anu, you are a 30-year veteran of the TV business, but you were among the first to see the potential of Japanese animation for the Indian market. So what convinced you to place your bets on the Japanese animation almost 20 years back? With the acquisition of Doraemon when you were at Hangama, and then subsequently, and then the acquisition of Ninja Tori when you moved to Nick. I think you really betted big on Japanese animation and way ahead of time.
Well, I think the good thing was the bet paid off pretty well.
Yes.
What we started, life comes a full circle. I see Taka-san sitting out here. He and I were the first one to get, or rather to do the deal on Doraemon. India. This was for UTV, for us, Hangama TV, which belonged to
Hungama.
UTV at that point. Life has come a full circle. Hangama went to Disney, today Disney and Viacom has merged to become one company. At that time, especially, I'm talking about the early 2000s, the animation channels had just started coming to India. I don't think Indian animation industry was equipped to create local content. I mean, we had a capacity to produce very minimum, almost like short films, TV short films of the duration would range anything from half an hour to 1 hour. I think the industry was not equipped enough to, let's say, make a full-fledged series. So all the content, or rather all the kids channels that came with all the foreign content. Of course, because the channels came from the West, the majority of the content that came was Western content. But it was something new for the kids. For the first time, the kids were getting content which was purely made for them. They were not watching content which was made for adults. And because they didn't have any option, they had to consume it. There was a content which was being made for them and was being offered to them. So everything was anything that got launched on the channels was accepted by the audience, because, as I said, for the first time there was a content which was being offered to them which was actually meant for them. But when I came into this business and started studying what is it, basically figuring it out, why is it that a particular content is working more than the other. Of course, at that time, whatever little that I could understand was fine. It's something new for the kids. But for us as a team who were in charge of going out and buying content from all over the world, what we really couldn't fathom was what are the stories of the characters, and how the kids being able to relate to them. And we really couldn't figure it out. Honestly, at that point of time, couldn't figure out why those characters are working.
But you were getting ratings data to show that it was successful.
Yes, it was. And that's when I started doing a lot of research with the team in terms of what more that we can bring in. And that's when we first, at least me and my team, we came across Japanese animation. Of course, there was Pokemon at that point of time, which was still playing. But then we found out the classic animation, which was Doraemon. Of course, Shin-chan was picked up after I left the company. And when I came to Nickelodeon, we had picked up Ninja Hattori. I guess one of the reasons was when we started doing the research was that if you look at those storylines, there was a huge amount of cultural similarities between what those shows were offering. And if we looked at our own setup, if we make a setup or any show, the basic characters would be mom, especially a kid's show. It has to be dominated by parents, siblings, teachers, neighbors, the relationship between the kids and the parents and all that. And we just found everything in those particular
very
shows.
relatable culture.
So it was so relatable for the kids. And I guess that is what really clicked with these particular shows. There was so much of it, more and more we started figuring it out when it came to Ninja Hattori. Again, you have those, of course, your protagonists like a Doraemon and a ninja. Which child does not want this, a character like those as their friend who can do anything for them? But if you look at the basic premise of the entire other series, it was so similar and the characters were such that the children were able to relate to those characters. So that is where we put our monies, and we took that punt at that point of time. Thankfully, it paid off. And as a matter of fact, I would go a step further and I would say that also became a good learning curve for us when we started making our own content. When we realized, okay, we need to come up with the characters and the plots and the basic premise of the show, which are more relatable. While yes, children, we all love the story of the superheroes and everything else, but at the heart of it, the basic premise of the, or the basic setup of the any show or series or anything has to be something that the audience are able to relate to it. And I think that's all we started that journey.
I think that rich data of audience behavior analysis must have definitely helped. I think did it fuel future acquisitions as well, knowing that what is working now, in some way, did it influence future acquisitions?
As a matter of fact, it was not what really fueled it was not so much of more of such acquisition, but it was more of local production.
Right. Yeah,
it
obviously.
Was a big learning for us in terms of one school of creation can get into a completely super imaginary and superhero zone, and the other one, which is more like a slice of life, create characters, create stories which children are able to relate to. Just to give you an example, one of our latest show that we have launched called Chiku or Bunty, it's all about sibling rivalry.
Right.
There are so many times when we think of kids or we think of animation, we really want to think big, and why not? Animation allows you to do so. But at the same time, here is a show, and our ratings clearly show from the day it has got launched, it has been on #1 position in the kids category in India.
Right.
It's because of that relatability. And I genuinely believe there's a lot that we learned from, from our experience of acquiring Doraemon and Ninja and everything else. And of course, over the years, we have seen, at least if not acquired, we have definitely seen a lot more animation, Japanese animation, from which we realize, okay, what really worked for them for this particular show, and that was our biggest learning.
Thanks, Anu. So I'm going to go to Kimura-san. Kimura-san, you are the producer of Jujutsu Kaisen and so many other prolific anime productions. But, the kind of quantum of production that comes out of Japan and in particular in manga, given the volume, what are the challenges, that the anime industry faces today?
Kimura Makoto と申します。
So I think I'm Kimura. I will talk in Japanese.
簡単に自己紹介しますと、20年ぐらいアニメのプロデューサーやってるんですけれども、
So I have been the producer of anime 20 years.
キャリアのスタートがフジテレビっていうテレビ局で、ビジネスプロデューサーとあと企画のプロデューサーをやっておりました。
And then in Fuji Television, I was a business producer and then the planning producer.
で、その後、ツイエンジンという企画会社を通して、2年ぐらい、働いてから、マッパっていうアニメのスタジオに移って、そこでもアニメのプロデューサーをして。
And then after TNG 2 years, and then after that I switched to MAPPA, and then that is the studio.
で、昨年、ブルーライツっていう自分の会社を設立しまして、今に至るんですけれども。
Then afterward, the Blue Life company I made.
はい。手掛けたタイトルとしては、有名なやつだと、呪術廻戦っていうタイトルとか、アタックオンタイタン、進撃の巨人ですね。とか、チェンソーマンとかを、やっておりました。
Then there are three important things, Jita Taikan, Chainsaw Simon とか、then three major titles that I have come up with.
そのテレビ局からアニメのプロダクションに、行って、見える景色っていうのはその立場によって結構違って、
What you see actually in the TV, then in the anime production also, animation production also, what you see is actually different when you get inside.
で、マッパにいたときは、アニメのスタジオにいながら、自社でそのビジネス周りをやるっていうのがなかなか珍しい取り組みだったんですけれども、そこで結構たくさんの課題も感じておりました。
And then even in MAPPA also, when I was involved in that, then I think I felt a lot of other challenges also, while the one side of the business part, I had to take care of it.
先ほど手塚誠さんの話にもあったと思うんですけれども、出版社と、グッズのメーカー、あとアニメのプロダクションとか、もともと手塚治虫さんが作ったエコシステムがあったと思うんですけれども、そこからどんどん発展していって、それぞれの立場っていうのがかなり複雑に絡み合うような今、現状になっていると思います。
And then even the three basic pillars that Tezuka-san actually started off, that was there, but I think after it evolved into that, there are lot of challenges which are actually coming up and then cropping up and evolving.
で、先ほど中山さんの話もあったと思うんですけれども、アニメの市場自体は、すごいグローバライズしたおかげで、伸びておりまして、マッパに行った時に、感じていた課題っていうのは、やっぱりその需要に対して供給力っていうのがなかなか追いつかないような、事態になってるっていうこともあるんじゃないかなと思ってます。
Then in global also, like in Nakasama's presentation also, there is that lot of animation is now has become global. But while I was in Mappa, I was involved in some kind of a challenges, and then I sensed a lot of challenges there.
で自分の会社を設立した理由としては、そういったそのクリエイターの数をどんどん増やしていけるようなエコシステムを作るということと、あとはそのクリエイティブとビジネスの距離っていうのをもう少し縮めていくっていうのが課題かなと思ってます。
And then why actually I started off with my own country, that I wanted to increase the number of creators, and then also I wanted to reduce the distance between the creators and the business aspect of it.
過去にその海外の方と共同制作、したこともありまして、アメリカだったり中国だったり、あとはそのアニメのクリエイターさんとかもかなり多国籍で、本当に欧米から、アジアから中東まで、あとアフリカの方もいらっしゃるとか、そういう本当にいろんな国の方々が、僕らがその手塚治虫さんのアニメを見て、どんどん育ってきてアニメを作っていったみたいに、今世界のお客さんも、どんどんその日本のアニメがグローバルで配信されるようになって、でそれが自分のルーツになってクリエイターになっていくっていう道筋を描けてるんじゃないかなと思います。
And I think we in the past also we deployed many people from different countries, different nationalities, from America, from US, from Middle East, and from so many other places also. Then basically we created that. And then in Japanese animation industry, it is very important now that it is seeing the globalization and the distribution, which is almost global.
なんでなんていうんですかね、どんどんグローバルで世界のお客さんがクリエイターになっていくっていうところを、日本のアニメーションを作るっていうところに取り入れていくっていうこともこれからの時代には必要なんじゃないかなということと、あとはグローバルのアニメプラットフォーム、それこそネットフリックス、アマゾンもそうだし、クランチロールっていうところもそうだし、なんかいろんなところでお客さんはアニメを見ていると思うんですけれども、なんかそこのプラットフォーム間の競争っていうのが、結構そのアニメの、なんていうんですかね、コンテンツの種類っていうのを、ある種制限してきてしまってる、なんか経済的な、合理性もあるんじゃないかなと思っていて、で、それを、もうちょっと多様性のある形で、それこそ手塚治虫さんがそのブッダを作ったみたいな、ああいうなんかその一人の人からそういういろんな、目線の作品が出てくるってことは、なかなか起きえないことだと思うので、グローバルの目線でいろんな国の方々と一緒に作っていくってことが何かブレイクスルーなんじゃないかなと思って、会場を設立して。
So while I think in the global part, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and then different platforms exist, but I think it is very important to have the Japanese animation also to be a part of it. And then while the contents are important, they are also closely related to the economics or the business side of it. So I think it is very important to have the Tezuka-san's basic model, and then we want to have and then thrive upon it, and then see how Japanese can become more global in terms of animation and animation distribution.
で、先ほどのモディ首相のスピーチにもあったと思うんですけれども、アニメとかゲームとか音楽とかいろんなエンタメのカルチャーっていうのは結構近い距離にあると思うので、なんかそこのアニメって結構総合芸術で、音楽もあるし、イラストもあるし、それが動いていくし、みたいな、いろんなその広がり方ができると思うので、何かそういうグローバルの新しい風っていうのを吹き込んで、新しいコンテンツを生み出していきたいなと思っています。
I think what we heard in the morning also from Prime Minister Modi, that gaming, animation, the music and illustrations and so on and so forth. So I think there are many opportunities which give us a lot of promise that animation can be actually built and then can be expanded in different ways.
あとは今やろうとしていることとしては、その Web3 とか NFT とか、なんかそういう新しい技術っていうのが生まれてきていて、でAI もそうですね。で、なんかそういったものが、どういうふうにアニメの、制作に、あとはビジネスモデルに、転用できるかってことは、 次世代のそのスキームとしては考えていかなきゃいけないなと思っていて、今、僕も新しい取り組みで、その著作権 NFT なるものを発明しようとしたりとか、これはチャレンジであるんですけれども、グローバルの方々が日本のアニメにも簡単に投資できるような、なんかそういうシステムを作ったり、して、新しいエコシステムにしていきたいなとか思ってます。
Another important point is that there are various new technologies which are now coming up, Web3, NFT, and then AI, of course, and then new technologies also. So I think it is very important that the Japanese animations also, and then the global animation producers, they have to have some kind of a way to invest in Japanese animation. And then that is where I am actually working in NFT, the copyright, and then also trying to find out opportunities where the foreign investors can put in and then can invest in Japanese animation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that the business is changing so rapidly, and I think on one side there's an interesting opportunity maybe for Japan and India to work together. I think we're already seeing anime being produced outside of Japan as well. I think Blue Eyed Samurai is again a shining example, of a show that in some ways looks pretty much authentic, at least to the fan who's just coming into anime. But again, when you look at the creators behind it, a lot of them are actually from outside Japan. So I think this is a new dynamic that is coming in. I think more and more content production is no longer localized. It's becoming more global in nature. It's going to be hard to pick that where has this content originated from, and I think that's the changing face of the business today. I want to come back to Tezuka-san. When Osamu Tezuka-san started, obviously American animation and Walt Disney animation was already there, and movies like Snow White and these were very fluid animation, very detailed animation, right? And when you look at the style of anime, it's very different. And I think to a large part, Osamu Tezuka-san did contribute. So I would want you to talk about what other kind of techniques he evolved, to ensure the cost of production is low, yet it manages to engage the audiences.
今のお話で、手塚治虫が最初にディズニーのアニメーションを学んだという話がありました。
I think just now we talked about Osamu Tezuka-san, that is, he learned about the Walt Disney's animation.
で、手塚治虫が子供の頃からディズニーのアニメを見ていたのは本当のことで、そこで何を学んだかというと、アニメではなくて、ディズニーの絵や動きというものを学びました。
So I think what Tezuka-san actually, he had been actually looking at the Walt Disney animation for quite some time since the childhood, but instead of taking the content or the actual part of it, he wanted to know that how it can be made actually handmade.
そしてそれをアニメに応用したのではなくて、漫画の中にその考えを取り入れたわけです。
And then what he wanted is that instead of putting it directly into the anime, he wanted to put it in the comic part of it, manga part.
つまり動かないはずの絵を、どうすれば動いているように見えるかということを、ディズニーを研究しながら、その漫画というものをむしろ開発していったという。
So I think what the biggest learning of what he made from the Disney is that whatever is not moving, whatever is not possible, he wanted to learn and then put it in the manga so that it can be appear to move and then action packed.
ところが実際に自分がテレビアニメーションを作ろうと思った時にはそれができなかったわけです。
But I think when he started putting the same technique in the TV animation, what he wanted to do, he could not do it.
なぜならば、テレビ局も、自分の会社も含めて、それほどの、予算を使うことができなかったんですね。
And then why? Because there was no budget actually. The TV channels also did not put in enough budget for that.
ですから、ディズニーとは全く逆の考え方で、テレビのアニメーションを作りました。
Then that is the reason why it led to actually very different, almost opposite of the actual thought process for the.
なるべく動かさないということです。
And then why? Because this is that let us not put it as action, the moving part.
これによって、日本のテレビのアニメはアニメーションではなくアニメと呼ばれる違う、表現になったわけです。
And then that is where I think instead of animation in Japanese, the word came to be known as anime. Anime.
そして手塚治虫のところに集まっていたアニメーターたちは、 アニメーションを研究したのではなくて、もっとその映画であったり、小説であったり、そういうものをとても研究して、そういうところから自分たちなりの表現を作っていこうということを考えた。
And that is the reason why when he started, he looked at the painting, we looked at the pictures, and then he looked at the novels, and then what can be done to create the honey.
ですから日本のアニメーション自体はやっぱりそのディズニーの影響というよりはむしろ、そういう経済的な事情から生まれた新しい表現だと思ってもらうのがいいかと。
So I think what it's would be best to understand is that from the Disney part of it, the animation evolution, it was driven by the economic consideration, and then that is the reason what it led to the present state of animation in Japan, anime in Japan.
Right. So I think it's interesting the parallel that you've drawn, and in some way, I think one thing that's very unique about Japan is how manga is the first step, and from manga we have animes coming in. And then obviously, like you rightly pointed out, that budget was a constraint. And despite it being a constraint, I think Osamu Tezuka-san used it as almost as a style. And I think today, despite the fact there's so much money that is going into anime, that style still continues, and I think that's become almost iconic with Japanese animation. The work that he started has now become a genre and a style. I think his contribution to the field of not just anime in Japan, but I think animation worldwide is truly remarkable. I think it's amazing to see what he started out, has become such a massive global movement. So we're truly privileged, to have you here and give us these insights into his thought process, the thought process of a genius. So thank you so much for that, sir. Katsumata-san, in your career, you have seen a tremendous amount of output coming out of Japan. Can you help us understand the scale of production of the anime industry, and how many anime shows get produced every year, and if you would be okay to share approximate budgets that.
そうですね、今ちょっと現実的なところで言うと、シリーズで言うと、大体日本は年間、300タイトルぐらい、継続と新シリーズも含めてできます。大体テレビのシリーズが4月、4月、10月、1月なんで、70から80タイトルずつということになります。
I think if you talk about it, then probably in a year you can see about 300 titles which are coming, both of the consecutive, both as the continuation of it, and then the new productions also. So in Japan, April, then January, and then so on and so forth. So these kind of a months where the new titles are brought out.
インドでも非常に多くのストーリーがあるって聞いたんですけど、やはり、日本のアニメーションもこの300タイトルっていうのは非常に多いと思うんですけど、特に増えてるわけではなく、作ってる人たちが人手不足は人手不足なので、その数がずっとここ最近維持されてる。
So I think in Japan there are 300 titles that I'm talking about. It may look a little large in numbers, but I think the main people, the point that there is no increase or there is stagnant, the workforce behind it is maintained at the same level.
で、制作費なんですけども、1話あたり US ドルって言うと、今、制作費はアニメ非常に過去と比べると上がっております。
So about the production cost, that is in dollar compared with the past, I think it has been on the rise.
作品によって違うんですけど、全然いろんなタイプがする15万ドルから30万ドルぐらいの間が1話あたり、シリーズの制作。
So I think anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 is what my guess is.
昔は10万ドルぐらいだったので、だいぶ高く。
So that's the cost per episode? Okay. Yeah.
さっき手塚さんの話でもあったように、もともとは安く、経済的な事情で、フルアニメーションじゃなくて、間であったり、リミテッドアニメーションで日本のアニメーションが非常に栄えていったっていうこともあるんですけど、そういう安く作るみたいなところが、だんだんやっぱり普通に高く作るっていうことは、やっぱりクオリティの高いものがより求められてきているとも言えます。
So in the beginning, I think we talked about that due to various economic considerations, economic budget considerations, we started looking at how to produce it economically. But then on the other hand, the quality also got demanded more and more, and then the high quality started looking into providing an impact on the budget or the cost part of it.
だから 2D 原画中心のものからフルアニメーションとの融合とか、よりちょっとCG 的なものも入った形での、制作の使い方がこれから増えて。
So, for example, let me just enumerate that instead of two-dimensional animation, then we started with the full animation and then the CG animation also. So there was a different, and then there was a high rise in terms of quality and the expansion.
So I think it's remarkable just the sheer volume of shows that get produced. I think what's interesting is also the cost per episode is quite high. So there's a serious amount of financial investment, that goes into it. So I'm going to come to the numbers man on this panel, Nakama-san. So what percentage of these shows are commercially successful? Like when you talk about 300 shows getting produced every year, what is the percentage? And a follow-up question to that would be, what is, in terms of absolute revenue, what is defined as success? Is it $5 million? Is it $10 million on a show or on a season? Is that considered a success? So yeah.
Normally say that I used to say that 2% is a total ratio.
3%.
10%.
Oh, 10%.
1 out of 8 is less than the production. That means that to produce 300 titles a year, and each title 5 stories at 150K and 250K. But in a total of the 12 episodes, 30 episodes, each quarter is one series of the animation is invention cost at 2 to 3 million, right? And 2 to 3 million, so how much of the title can be recouped at the 2 to 3 million? It's going to be 10% or 20%, something like that. But gradually we come to understand that it's summarization of what we are talking about. My feeling is a kind of the fringe revolution. So what's special in Japan is that most of the production development cost is quite less. In the Tezuka Osamu's cases, only just one episode is at 10K. Very cheap at the time. And gradually the production cost is 10K and 50K, and finally 150K or 250K in these days. But however, still much less than that. Because Square Game is that the development is more than per episode of 1 hour is at 2 to 3 million. Wow. But recently, even the Demon Slayer is less than 1 million. And the other more that Haruto titles is more than 10 million something. Right. Hourly ratio. Still, such an 300 title is pushing in such a limited number of the budget, and more than 300 titles a year of the animation. But we still have more than 500K titles in comic books. Comic books is a proven
the manga.
What could be the popularity coming from that? The human character world setting was established by manga, and 500,000 of the titles. We can pick it up. Okay, this successful manga into that animation. Now we have more than 30K or 40K of titles animation. Still, affluent number of the manga titles remaining.
Okay. Quick response from you, Katsumata-san, for you, because you now have so many anime titles under your company. If among all the productions that come out every year and the investment that you put in, if you can give us a number that, yes, if a season makes $5 million, you'll be happy. $10 million, you'll be extremely happy. Is there a number that makes you really happy when you put in the kind of investment that you're putting in? And what would that number be?
まあ、大きい方がハッピーなのはハッピーですけれども、
I
大
will
体
be
イ
very
メー
happy
ジ
the
で言
bigger
う
it is, the larger it is, the better,
と、
happier.
まあ、スマッシュヒットと言われてるタイトルで、大体5ミリオンドルで、
So Mark said it actually resulted in $5 billion.
で
Wow.
10ミリオンドルを超えていく利益ですね。利益で。
That is the
これは
profit
ヒット
part
ベ
of
ースで10ミリオンドルを超えていくものは、やはりかなりのヒットですね。
And then more than $10 million profit making is very, very big hit.
ただ、アニメの場合、やはりその単年度のことよりも、障害収入、障害利益みたいなものが非常に重要視されます。
So I think this is also very important, that just not the profit part of it, but the income part of it also is very important.
まあ、アウチメイトレベニュー。
Ultimate revenue, yes,
で
of
これ
course.
は多分日本で成功しているものでいうと、そのポケモンであり、まあ、いろいろ見ていると、そういう生涯にわたる、成長しているみたいなところの、まあ、ビジネスストラクチャーっていうのが、まあ、アニメの場合は非常に強みかなと
So
思
the
います。
merchandise part also is very important, that if we can connect it and then we can get into that domain.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, Anu, I'm going to come back to you. You are one of the most prolific producers of original Indian animation. I think 15 successful shows, Motu Patlu, Shiva, Rudra, so many, right? And you very strongly believe in Indian animation, and I think thank you so much for that. But for you, when you decide to invest, what are your considerations? And then for you, how do you define your success?
See, we are, as a broadcaster, obviously the first and foremost, for us, the criteria of success is what is the show that's going to rate the best.
Ratings,
Which
yes.
is, it all boils down to rating for us. Yes, I completely believe that Indian animation is the way forward. As a matter of fact, I think we have laid the foundation of a very strong, we've created that cloud. We have supported, as a producers, we have supported, we have also went out and created some of the shows. As a matter of fact, most of the IP, the difference between how I can't speak for other broadcasters, but for us ourselves, is we develop the concepts in-house.
Right.
And then we hire the services of the studio basically to execute those shows for us. So yes, we definitely believe in our own storytelling, because I think there are more and enough stories for us to tell.
Right.
As a matter of fact, in the presentation that was shown, it said most of manga has come from literature.
Right.
I mean, there's no dearth of literature that
In
we
India.
have in
Oh,
the
yes,
country.
absolutely.
Why is it that we are not exploring and a perfect collaboration that happens where we bring in, as you spoke about the discussion of Ramayana and Mahabharata being made, we have, unlimited stories. You said there are 50,000 stories, or 500,000. Yeah, half a million stories that you have. Trust me, when we start digging it up, we wouldn't be short of that either.
Yeah.
And why is it that our stories and perhaps different kind of storytelling, how that show needs to be executed, these are the perfect places, or these are the perfect things which bring an Indian-Japanese collaboration. We are always looking for making sure that, something which is often being asked to us is, why is it that we are not getting into the co-production? One is the universal fact remain, budgets are always an issue for all of us. It's always a constraint. And this is how the collaboration needs to happen going forward, that there are stories that come from either from India or from any other territory. And, the style of creating animation also is brought together, and something new is offered to the audience. As far as your question to how do we rate success, obviously monetary or the revenues is one big yardstick to measure it. But the fact that today Motu Patlu, which we started airing in 2012, it's still in production.
Still, yeah.
It is one of the fastest, perhaps one of the biggest library of the local show is of Motu Patlu. That's the pace at which we created. Obviously, there was a demand from the audience. There was a need from the audiences. How we responded to that need to, meet up with that need. And the fact that it has stayed as in the top 3 shows in the category is a measure of success for us. As a broadcaster, that's how we will measure the success. If we don't have the response from the audience, if we don't get that, if they don't keep coming back to those stories, obviously we're not going to continue making new seasons of one show every year. And thankfully for us, it's not just Motu Patlu. Virtually every show that we have created has had multiple seasons. We never stopped it. So for us, yeah, that's how we measure our success.
And do you think that licensing merchandising revenue is now becoming a significant revenue stream, or we are still some distance away from that?
No, I think we have started taking small steps in that direction, and we have started getting the results. Today, for a simple, I'll just give you a simple example. A Motu Patlu, it was because whatever research was being done, and one realized that yes, there is a demand for these two characters. That we've had a IPL feed purely, where Motu Patlu were giving all the commentary.
Wow.
So obviously there is a demand. I mean, of course it gets.
That's actually a very interesting innovation.
Yes, it is. I think
because it just
brilliant.
Makes the younger kids connect to the sport.
Yes. So it's not somebody who's not taking cricket too seriously, but wants to have fun as well.
It's a great initiation into the sport.
Absolutely. So again, where does that come from? It is the popularity of character that within the organization we were told, we want to use these two characters for commentary, and like, why not? It doesn't get bigger than this, bringing Motu Patlu into IPL. So yes, it is the steps. We are moving in that direction. Of course, we are miles away from where some of the other global IPs have reached. But I think the kind of success that we are seeing with our own story, with our characters, storytelling and everything, I don't see that, we're not very far off from reaching those big milestones.
Yeah. I think the last point that you made about popularity of characters, I think as Graffiti, for us also, when we started with Krishish Bhartiboy character, we had only 8 movies, right? But with those 8 movies, the kind of following that we saw, even today when we launched Krishish Bhartiboy Bharate Hum, it was a different genre, because from folk stories to now telling stories of freedom fighters, we were very concerned that would our fans accept this? And I think given by the comments that we are seeing and the feedback that we are seeing, yes, there is a section of fans which says, oh, we still love the old ones and we want those to come back. But I think that whole draw, that captive audience base of fans for Krishish Bhartiboy came back, and they said, yes, this is also interesting. And that draw was for us that because it was Krishish Bhartiboy, we were able to tell these really, really different, almost different genre of storytelling. And I think that's the power of good characters. Once you have good characters, once you have great following, absolutely, I think the canvas can be a lot bigger. Kimura-san, I'm going to come to you now. You obviously have produced so many successful shows. A lot of the shows are not just in India, but they are also global in nature. So do you consider that data, that what is working in the US market, what is working in the European market? Is that a consideration for you when you create, especially when you're going from one season to the next? Do you look at the data of the previous season, and then do you pass that data on to your writers?
そうですね。KPI 見てるかどうかで言うと、なんか結構日本でヒットするアニメがグローバルでヒットするっていう状態になるっていう確率が結構高い気がしていて、まずは海外向けにみたいなことはあんま考えずに、目の前の人を、目の前っていうのは日本の中の人っていうのを意識して作っているのが結果的に世界に広がっていくっていうのが、これまでのヒットでは多いんじゃないかなとは思ってます。ただこれからちょっと変わっていくようなこともあると思いますので、それを世界の人とトライしたいなと思います。
What I feel is from my experience is that if you talk of the KPI, then whatever is made for the Japanese market, I think that is more or less it is becoming a hit in the international global markets also. So our strategy is to create the animation for whoever is in front of us, that is for the Japanese market, for the Japanese kids, for the Japanese society, and then it automatically becomes a hit outside also. That is what has been the trend so far. But I think probably the trends might change, and then we have to take into account that part also.
なんか見る環境に応じて、作られるコンテンツの種類も変わっていくんじゃないかなと思っていて、今、サイマル、同タイミングで世界のお客さんが、日本のアニメーションを楽しむっていう環境になってきているので、これがどういうふうにコンテンツの、どういうふうな作品が作られていくことにつながっていくのかっていうのは、 検証して、またいろいろトライしたいなと思ってます。
I think it's very important that we have to keep our vision also futuristic, and then what kind of content will work most for us. We have to take care of it, and then we also have to take into account that what the world audience is looking and then trying to get out of the Japanese animation, and then we have to keep that part very, very carefully in our future strategies.
Right. Yeah, I think what you made a very interesting point, that ultimately it's important to root your stories in one place and be true to one set of audience. And if you are able to excite that audience, then obviously that spillover effect will happen, because I think it's important to have at least one anchor territory or region so that that fan base is covered. So I know we would love to keep talking, and I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'm going to now open up the floor for a couple of questions. So can we have a couple of mics on the floor, or otherwise you can stand up? I think this is not such a big room. So yeah, we have one gentleman at the back. Yeah, can you please stand up?
The question is, the cost of production that you're valuing in dollar, that is going to change in some time. And from the merchandise point of view, making merchandise and the appeal to the younger audience, that is also a possibility that could change. So how are you seeing that to happen? And Anu madam, what is your opinion on building a bigger ecosystem within India for anime that could kind of connect not just India, not just from the broadcasting point of view, but increasing the number of skilled people who are involved in the
過去発表者、日本の発表者からはいろいろ意見があったんです。
Your question to me was, what is it that we need to do to?
How do you create a bigger ecosystem in India? What needs to be done?
Yes, more talent pool can come in.
Okay. Well, we are one broadcasters. Obviously, more broadcasters need to come on board in terms of commissioning shows. As everybody mentioned out here, there are almost 300 titles that are produced in Japan. We need to increase those numbers in India as well. I can very proudly say today at JioStar, we are perhaps the leading producers of Indian animation shows in India. Whether it's for the channels and also for our digital platform. Legend of Hanuman is one of those. We need to, I have always believed the way we can increase this pool is we need to start creating animation not just for children, but for young adults, for teenagers. I'm sure all of you who are consuming anime in India, in India, the anime audience is not 2 to 14-year-old kids, which we define as our audience of a kids channel. It is the teenagers, we would ideally actually define that audience as 15 to 25 years old who are consuming anime. We need to start creating our stories. We need to start creating our characters, which appeal to the audience which is beyond kids.
Yeah.
The good thing is there is an audience which has today grown up on animation. Animation channel or the animation channels in India has been close to now 30 years. So there is a generation which has grown up, who themselves today are young parents. They are not as averse to animation, what the earlier generation was. Because we often hear, even as a broadcaster, we often hear saying, oh, animation is basically cartoons, which basically means it's for children. That's not the case anymore. I think it's high time we start creating our stories, we start developing the characters, and start telling stories to the older audience as well. That's how we will increase our pool. That's how we bring in more, people who have the skill to offer. Right now, they probably are not finding the right space to contribute to this particular industry. So we need to expand our horizon. As I said, I think I can very proudly say we are the largest producer of kids content. And I think for the first time, there is a content which unfortunately we don't hear much about, at least in India, is family show. We have content for adults and we have content for kids, but we really genuinely don't have something called family show, which basically Disney stands for. Everything is about family, togetherness, and everything. Legend of Hanuman is the first of its kind, and it's seen a huge amount of success. I think we have just come out with the 6th season so far. So we are, of course, as organization, we are doing our best. I think others need to take that risk, whether it's the digital platforms or other linear channels, and I think that's how we can just grow it further.
Yeah, I would just add to what Anu said, that I think the point is very valid, that the audiences have grown, and the kids of yesterday are teenagers and adults of today and parents as well. Very interesting statistic that I will share with you. Our show Bharat Hai Hum, right, which is based on the freedom fighters of India, it was rated among the top 10 shows on Netflix, and it was not in the kids category, but in the main TV show category. It also rose to be among the most watched shows on Netflix worldwide. It's an Indian show which is talking about freedom fighters of India, right? For it to rise to be among the most watched shows on Netflix worldwide is a phenomenal achievement. The point I'm trying to say is that I think our audiences are growing. One reason why manga succeeds in India is because it fills that gap for teenagers and adults to consume. They love animation, but they can't be watching, the Tom and Jerry's or the Chota Bheems or the Motu Patlus. They've gone beyond that. They want more mature storytelling, more deeper plots, right? That's the gap that anime fills, and I think that's where, as creators and producers, we need to start addressing that market. Do we have time for one more question?
How good, and if we are doing good, is being done in terms of dubbing the Hindi or the regional languages that we are doing?
So your question is, how good is the anime dubbing
is being done,
right,
and what more can be done? Because I feel that instead of going the English way, that we're translating the English one, how good it would be if we are able to translate it directly from Japan, the Japanese language. That would be more intimate and closer to the original.
Okay, fair
version.
point. Okay.
And I'm saying this from the authority, from the honor of being a voice artist. And I've officially given the voice of Captain Levi for Attack on Titan. So I have a closer view on that thing.
Okay, perfect. Can we have the translation, sir?
Yes. 勝丸さんにこれが通訳なんですけども、それは翻訳したことで、それを英語経由じゃなくて、例えば直接日本語経由でやる場合は、もっとコンテンツとしてはもっとダビングとしては有効じゃないかなと思いますので、その辺がいかがでしょうか。今は英語経由でなるんですけども、日本語経由で直接やってればいかがと思うんでしょうか。
はい。おっしゃるように、シナリオがあった場合、英語から、他の言語に、トランスレートされたり、吹き替え言語対応が行われていることが、現在は多いです。
I think you are right that right now the scenario is that from English, then it is being converted and translated into various languages.
ただ、当然のことながら、間接的に、言語が2つあると、ちょっとした感情だったり、微妙な演技のところがね、崩れたりするっていうことがあって、やっぱり監修すると、何かちょっと違和感を感じることが多いです。
And then you are also right that when it comes to the indirect way of creating this content, then probably some of the content loss, some of the inefficiencies, some of the inaccuracies, they also creep in, and then that is definitely is a point to be considered.
ただ実際違和感を言語を知らない私たちが言ってるわけではなく、実際ファンの人たちだったり、お客さんの反応で、お客さんの方がよく日本語を理解しようとして、日本語のまま聞いてるファンが多いので、自分の言語になった時に、あれちょっと違うんじゃないのって逆にファンの方が気がつくことがあります。
And then basically, it is not our view, but also it is the voice of the fan, and then voice of the customer, voice of our audience who are actually looking at it.
だから海賊なんかのサブタイトルの訳の方が実際のタイトルよりもうまくできてるっていう場合も、だからあんまりいい例じゃないですけど、そういうことがあるわけですよね。
So basically, from the main side, the subtitles they deliver, and then they convey better content, and then that is what it is.
ただ、言語を直接日本語からそこの、言語に、英語を介さずにやるっていうのはやっぱり、重要なテーマでもあり、より、違和感なくっていう言葉が一番正しいと思う。違和感なく、セリフが伝わるっていうことなので、 そこはやはりやっていく必要はあると思います。で、実はそこに、今、言語対応に生成 AI っていうのが、かなりのところまで、文字ベースではかなりできて、それを今度吹き替えにしていくっていうステップもあると思うので、その英語を介さず、直接、日本語からその国の言語を、ちょっと生成 AI のヘルプを借りながら、やりながらやっていくっていう方も、ステップとしてはこれからあるかもしれないですね。
So I think you are right. Then when it comes to from the Japanese directly converting into the local or the country language, and without being uncomfortable, this is a point to be considered definitely. But I think the character based, the expression based, the word based, that becomes very large, and then the mechanization has to be there. In that mechanization, probably we have to take into account the generative AI also. These kind of things also have to be looked into it. But I think the most important point we have to be that there should not be any uncomfortable feeling about it.
あと、最近声の生成 AI っていう驚くべきものを、いくつかデモで聞いたんですけれども、
I think in the demo also about the voice, the generative AI also is playing a role. That is what I heard.
で、その吹き替えは、かなりのレベルまで、その人の声を活かして言語変換できるものなんですけれども、やっぱりこれはやっぱり声優さんたちの権利処理の問題だったり、逆に言うと、例えばハリウッドで言うとトム・クルーズが、英語で喋ってるのがそのままインドのヒンズー語になって日本語になるっていうのが、やっぱり権利処理の問題だったり、本人たちの権利の問題とかいろいろあるので、そこはちょっと、一つ大きな課題かなと思います。
And then even if you, for example, Tom Cruise, he is talking in American English, and then if he starts saying the same thing in the local languages also, I think, and then based on the generative AI, the use of generative AI, I think that is the point, but there will be some challenges involved around it.
そういう意味ではその吹き替えだったり、その字幕対応っていうのは、どんどん直接的にはなっていくんですけれども、ちょっとその生成 AI の話も含めてちょっと話が複雑化しているというふうには思ってます。
And then considering these points, I think the talks and then the discussions will become, the considerations will become a little more complicated based on that when it comes to involving the generative AI tools also.
Right. So I think on that note, we will definitely end this panel because AI is a whole new conversation altogether. But thank you so much. A huge round of applause from the legends of Japan. I think this has been a privilege, absolute privilege to moderate this session. Thank you so much, Anu.